So last week, Zanette asked if there was a way to limit recruitment numbers based on a value. And I thought maybe the quota config external module would work for that, because it does allow you to set up quotas for particular fields and values. But the issue with the quota config is that it only tracks um, a minimum and not a maximum. So if you had like a minimum number of, people with like a certain ethnicity or gender that you want to recruit, it kind of helps you with that, but it's not going to cap that recruitment for those same values. So I had to kind of think of a different way to solve that problem. And I knew that there was a smart variable for called aggregate count that might work. So let me just show you what I came up with, and then I'll explain how I did it. So right here we have a project, and I just have the gender label here so we could see it. And I set up the recruitment limit so that you can only recruit 5 of each gender. And as you can see here, there are already 5 males, and then there are 3 females. So if we go to the survey, and the survey is just the simple gender field. I didn't go crazy with the design, since it's just a proof of concept. But since the limit is 5 males and we already have 5 males in the project, if I select male here, this banner pops up that says the recruitment limit has been reached for this demographic, and the submit button is hidden, so that way this can't be submitted. But if I select female, which there are only 3 and the limit is 5, I'm allowed to save that. And if I select non-binary, I'm allowed to save that as well. So if I select female and submit that, now we have 4 in here, 4 females. And then if I select it again and submit, now we have 5 females in here. So if I open up the survey again a 5th time, and I select female, now it's saying that recruitment limit has been reached for this demographic. So now it pops up for male and female, and non-binary still, we're allowed to recruit that. So the way I did this was using the smart variable aggregate count. So if we go to the designer here, and I'll just open up the demo design, and we'll go to smart variable. This is what I used for this. And the only issue is you get to specify the field. So here, you could say aggregate. I want the aggregate count for age. You could specify the field. So I'd specify gender, but the aggregate count smart variable does not allow you to specify a value. Even though it has this parameters here, it doesn't give you a chance to say, I only want like male equals 1, female equals 2, that I only want gender where male or gender equals 1. So it's only going to give you the count of the total number of records where that field has a value. So if we go back to the record here, so now that I have 10 records and all of them have a value, the aggregate count for gender would be 10. It doesn't give me the option of splitting out. I want male, have the count for male or female. The way to get around that is to use this parameters field, but not in the way you think you would use it. You have to use the parameter. You have to use the report as a parameter. So what you have to do essentially is for each demographic that you are wanting to create a count for, you have to create a report. So I have here a report for male and a report for female. So if we just go into the edit, we'll look at one of these reports. So I just have it set up where it's pulling in the gender, and then I'm filtering on male. So if I run this report, it's only going to show me records where male is selected. And then the same thing for female. So what you have to do is then use this unique report name as the parameter for the smart variable. So if we go back to the designer and I go into the demo, it's really basic. I have the banner here. I have the field for gender, and then I have a limit check. And the limit check is where I'm assigning that value. Or I'm sorry, not assigning I'm not assigning the limit. I'm grabbing the count. So here I'm saying that if gender equals 1, I want give me the count for gender for this report. And this report is the male report. And if gender equals 2, give me the count for gender for the report for the female report. And all I'm doing is I'm just outputting a number. It's just giving me the count. And if we unhide this so you can see what it's showing, and we go back to the dashboard here, you'll see here that it's saying 5. So, and this is for female. So if we go back to, if we select a male, it's going to say 5 as well because we're already at the limit. But it's only outputting that value for whichever one I've selected. And I'm using that for a couple of reasons. One is that I have this field set up as an integer because this is a calc text. And so anything that's being output is text, but I'm using REDCap to force that value to become an integer. That way I can run an equality comparison to say if something is greater than or less than or equal to, and not text where it equals 5 as a character. So that's where I'm getting the count from. So this is how I'm assigning the count. So if we want to do a recruitment for non-binary, we would just add the next value here. And I'll do that because I'll walk you through creating the report and setting this up after I finish explaining the rest. So the next thing is we want to show this banner. And this is where we're setting the limit for recruitment in the branching logic. So I'm saying if the person selects male and the limit check equals 5, so this is where I'm setting my recruitment limit right here. So if I wanted to change this to 10, I want 10 males and 10 females, this is where I would set this. And because you may have different criteria for each gender, or if you have different ethnicities, you may want, like, based on your population, you live in an area that has mostly Caucasian and very little African American, Hispanic, or Asian. You may say, okay, well, I'll take 50% Caucasian and 25 of each, or 20 of each of the others, or however you want to do it. So you want to be able to set those limits with some granularity, as opposed to being like, I just want 10. And so these don't have to be equal, but you're saying that if somebody selects gender equals 1 or male, then I want you to check the limit for male. And if you're selecting female, I want you to check the limit for female. And really this only matters to show the branching logic and to set the limit, because this isn't discerning whether there's male or female. If you want, you could have a separate limit check for each type. So instead of having this as like a nested if statement where you're checking depending on what's selected, you could just have this as like limit check male and another field that's limit check female. And it depends on what your comfort level is in programming some of these things. Sometimes it's nice to break everything out into individual components. That way you can adjust things independently instead of having to have things nested together. So with the branching logic, it's only going to show if we've selected male and we've hit the limit, or if we've selected female and we hit the limit. That's going to display the banner. To hide the submit button, and this is important, that you could just have somebody, if you want to continue to allow them to submit, but say like, hey, your banner just says like, hey, we've already topped out on this demographic, but if you want to submit, like if something opens up later, we can keep you in mind or something like that. So you may want to allow them to submit their survey anyway. But if you don't want them to submit, what we would do is use the hide submit external module. So if we go to manage here, and to enable the module, you would just click enable, and you would type hide submit, and it would pop up here. It's not going to pop up here because I've already enabled it, but if it does pop up here, you would just click enable, and then it basically it gives you an action tag where you can set the condition to show or hide the save button. There's nothing to configure, because all it is the action tag. And what you do is you put the action tag on the field that you want to trigger the hide submit. So it's essentially, if this field is visible, the submit button is hidden, and vice versa. If this field is not visible, then the submit button is visible. And all you do is add hide submit to the action tag, and it sets that functionality up for you. So if you want to allow them to continue to enter their survey, you don't need this hide submit. But if you do want to prevent records from being saved after a demographic has been reached for the recruitment limit, then you would want to use the hide submit. So now that I've gone over the basic functionality here, we'll set this up for the non-binary and then set up the recruitment for that. So we would first have to create a report. And one way to do this really easily, especially if you're going to have multiple parameters, or if, I know Jeanette's going to be doing something by state. So if you have to build 50 of these reports, which is unfortunate, an easy way to kind of do that is to just do copy and change the value here. So then we'll go to edit. That way you're not having to set everything up again. So we'll just do non-binary. And then, everything else is set up here. And all we're going to do is we're going to select non-binary, and we're going to save this. And we're just going to go to the reports because we're interested in this value here. So I'm just going to copy that. And then in the designer, we're going to come down here to the limit check, and we're going to add a limit for that because we want to get the count for that value. And I'm just going to copy this whole thing here and add another nested if statement. And this is 3, I believe. Let me double check. Yes. So now we're adding the value for 3, and I'm going to grab the report value that I had, and we're going to paste that in here. And then the important thing is that when you add another statement, you have to have matching parentheses, because these parentheses here are for this if statement, and then this if statement is nested in the false section for this statement, and then this is they're nested within each other. They're not separate. So one way to make sure that you have enough is if you click on this last parentheses here and you see that it's here on this if one, then you don't have enough. So you will want to add another one, because the last one should come up here to the calc text. And a good way to check your bracket matching is to just kind of use your cursor to go through each of these. So now that we have this set up, now we're going to set the limit for the banner in the branching logic. So we're going to come up here and we're just going to copy this. And we have to make sure we add or here because we're adding another statement. And we're going to say equals 3. And then just for this, we'll just say equals 1. That way I don't have to enter 5 of them to show you. And then we're going to hit save. And that's all there is to it. It should all be set up. So if we go back to the survey and open it up, and then this is, well, we can hide that again later. But now if I select non-binary, you can see the limit count is the check is 0 because that report doesn't have any records in it. So it's empty right now. But if I hit submit, and then we close this again, and then open up the survey, and now I select non-binary, now we've reached the limit for recruitment for all 3 of these. So the important thing is just having a report for each variable that you're using for your recruitment. And if, for Zanette, if she's going to have like 50 of these, one for each state, I would recommend just creating a report folder and just throwing them in there. That way you don't have this long list on the left here. So it will take some doing, but getting it set up is not very difficult. So does anybody have any questions about that?
I don't have any questions, Manny, but I just want to thank you for your expertise and help. It was really informative, and this is going to be really helpful as I set up my parameters and limit by state. This is really helpful. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.